Okay, thanks everyone for attending. It looks like it's a small crowd, so that's good too. So I guess to first get it off, get us started, Allie, I wanted to go ahead since you are on a limited time. If you could just talk to us. John, I wanted to add Allie to the agenda so we could talk about the new vendor bill that Councilmember Nadeau just recently introduced and possibly add that as a toolkit or add that to our toolkit in the future. Obviously, it needs to go through the process and still be signed and all of that. But as a potential option in the future for looking at 18th Street, but also the folks that utilizing Unity Park as a potential solution to activate other parts of Adams Morgan. So
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. Allie, would you be able to give us a brief update and, or I guess not brief, if you could give us an update on the legislation, what it's about, and how you think it could benefit not just Ward 1, but the rest of DC?
Yeah, I can definitely keep it brief. Thanks for having me, Commissioner. So just for everybody, my name is Allie Bobak. I am the Constituent Services Coordinator for Councilmember Nadeau. And I guess almost 2 weeks ago now, Councilmember Nadeau introduced the Sidewalk Vending Zones Amendment Act of 2020. And this bill came after, really in response to a kind of specific constituency around of sidewalk vendors in Columbia Heights. If you go up to 14th Street, you'll see a lot of vendors right around where the Target is. But I know that Adams Morgan also used to have a fairly big vending community. And the asks from the vending community were basically to provide a clear path so that they could legally vend, because the way that the system currently works is it's quite complicated. It's also quite expensive. So you're dealing with Department of Health, Department of Transportation, and DCRA to get a license. So you have to get approvals from all three. And one of the hardest approvals to get is a public space permit. As many businesses in Adams Morgan know, using public space is a very difficult thing. So we tried to solve for a lot of those problems. And what we came up with was this idea of creating sidewalk vending zones for sidewalk vendors. So what this does is, one, it's a little bit confusing, so please stop me, but it creates, and also I helped write it, so sometimes I get into the weeds. It creates sidewalk vending zones, which are areas of the city that have different sidewalk vending spaces. So if you are vending in a zone, you can move between different spaces. So what this does is creates mobility. So in a way, it's kind of, if you kind of imagine it, it looks like a bunch of mini markets in a way where vendors can kind of move between the spaces, but they can't vend in that space in between. So it delineates where they can vend. And to be able to vend in that zone, it creates two different license types. One's the individual license, so you can get a license to vend in that zone. The other is a manager license. And the way this is envisioned is that a manager license could be held by a community-based organization or a co-op led by vendors. And it would be, so the organization would get it, and then they would basically be a manager, and vendors could then register, underneath that organization. So that in a way allows vendors to kind of have a guide into formality, because they're registering with that manager who can then make sure they're in compliance with all the necessary, for example, health regulations, but that individual vendor doesn't have to go through the process with all the different agencies. That individual vendor also doesn't have to spend all the money to get the public space license. So that's kind of creating the zones. And then what the bill also does is it creates an amnesty program for vendors who have outstanding debt if they are vending in the zone. Oh, sorry, Jay, I just saw your note. Let me just send the press release here about the sidewalk vending. So it creates an amnesty program for those vendors. It decriminalizes sidewalk vending. So it takes the police out of it. And that is complementary to the decriminalization vending bill that the council member also introduced, but it's a little more narrow because it's just for sidewalk vendors. And so amnesty program, criminalization, and it pre-establishes currently one zone. So it defines a zone in Columbia Heights with vending spaces, basically starting from where the Metro in Columbia Heights is, over into Mount Pleasant, kind of up and over, and it creates a little square. So I think that was a lot of information. It's outlined in the press release that I put, and obviously happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have questions. I just think that it's a cool idea, and I think that we could eventually get behind something like that. And if that bill does get enacted, hopefully it could be amended, or there's a process where we can add additional zones if it works out that our community would want one.
Yeah, and it's still, as you mentioned, Commissioner, it still has a long path. So I don't know, there could be space to put in to create those zones while we're going through the whole review process. Again, kind of I think the key benefits of that is if your community has sidewalk vendors, this gives them a path to formality because they're already there, right? They already need the money, especially post-COVID. They need that type of job. They need that type of flexibility. They're micro enterprises, they're micro businesses, but they just don't have this path available. So if they're already there, our sense was why not give them kind of a way to do this legally and bring them into formality, have them pay taxes, everything like that.
Okay, cool. John, or any other folks have questions?
If I may, Japer, let me start with your point about multiple zones. I bet you it's easier to get the bill through if we just, this is just one. But maybe a way to make it easy to add more would be to say the bill authorizes Columbia Heights, but then Ally's put in the bill language that says that the mayor can authorize up to 3 more after 12 months. So that people are thinking this is just for Columbia Heights and we're not going to go crazy with it and we're not going to try anymore until we get some experience at Columbia Heights. I see Dee Dee nodding, thank you. But why have to go through legislation all over again if we want to have a second or a third one someplace? The second point that I'd like to raise, and I just have 3, Japer, has to do with the requirement to use a commercial kitchen. I'm wondering how, with the manager's license, the manager will be able to assure itself that all of the people using that under that manager's license are using a commercial kitchen. Any thoughts on enforcement and safeguards?
Yeah, so we didn't, we didn't touch any health regulations. So that's what that falls under. But we thought about this a lot. So there's 2 thoughts. So one, and I don't, to be honest, and I'll look through the bill, I don't remember what wording actually ended up in there because we went through a lot of iterations, but I believe there is a sentence in there, and please don't quote me on this, I'll look for it, where we basically ask the managers to have a certain amount of liability and responsibility when they sign up a vendor. So basically so for a market, for example, the market manager has to take, I forget the wording, but it's like they have to take a certain amount of precautions to have made sure that their vendors are following health regulations. So they would have to ask, what commercial kitchen are you going to? And then they would maybe call that commercial kitchen, but obviously they can't go to that commercial kitchen every week to make sure the food's actually being made there. So it's kind of like you have to have made enough effort to prove that you actually made an effort, right? And so I think we envision a similar type of situation with our vending zone managers as you would have for a market manager. Okay. The other thing is, I think, a lot of these vendors, it might be a hard barrier to entry starting with the commercial kitchen. And so we definitely want to work. We're hoping, DC Health will be active and other, and the manager to, maybe change the menu, not saying they have to change their menu, but maybe there's a world where people could change their menu a bit to fall under the cottage food law, where they can make the food in their own homes. And then as they maybe make more money and they get more established, they could move up to a commercial kitchen. Obviously, each micro enterprise needs to make its decision, but that's an option that DC Health has presented to us, for example.
All right, thank you. I'm glad you're thinking about it. And of course, the reason I'm raising the issue is that I would hate for the whole program to fall as a flop because someone wasn't careful about the commercial kitchen rules. right, the third one, real simple. Our friends at Many Languages, One Voice, M-Love, just checking to make sure you've touched base with them.
Oh, yes, it was very much in coordination with their kind of key concerns with Vendedores Unidos. And, you know, I think a lot of the press that happened the first week was really, we didn't take any interviews. It was all kind of their, yeah. So, I mean, really what I present this, the first thing I should say is thank you to them and all the work that they did to kind of get the ideas and get this through, because it really was their advocacy that
All
made
righty,
this.
thank you. Japer, I'm happy to sign on. Anything you want to do to support this bill?
Yeah, cool. I think we should just keep it in the peripheries and encourage Councilmember Nadeau to reintroduce in the next term and get more co-sponsors. How many co-sponsors do we have so far?
So we currently have Robert White and Councilmember Silverman,
Okay, cool.
and it's referred to Mendelssohn's committee
Oh, Cal. Okay.
because it's
Well,
DCRA.
Brian, have you been promoted? Can you speak?
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So hey, Allie, I just have a couple quick questions. I read this last week, I think, and it seemed fairly clear. But I think there's something that a community can suggest a vending zone, and then there's like a 60-day comment period, something like that. I mean, obviously, our concern in the bid would be, somebody, wants to open a hot dog stand, next to the patio of a restaurant and starts, siphoning off businesses. And I mean, obviously, our businesses are struggling to survive as it is. So we obviously want to have some sort of, comment if something like that was proposed. And then secondly, so they're like on Columbia Road, there's some there are sidewalk vendors out there. I think most of them are probably unlicensed. I don't know if they're collecting taxes or not. They're not members of the bid. I guess they've given amnesty, which is fine, but going forward, would they be asked to to start playing by the rules and pay taxes, stuff like that? And would it be kind of a de facto zone if there's already people who have been using it as a vending area historically? I think that's
Yeah. So, okay. So I hear you on the 60 days. We actually are in drafting. We did put that at 60 days with the mindset that there would be enough space for community input. And I think in a way that a little bit relates to Commissioner Zatoli's comment of kind of looking at Columbia Heights possibly as a pilot, and then thinking a little bit more about how, future zones could get established. So definitely hear that feedback. In terms of vendors that are, I mean, this is a license type, and a zone wouldn't be de facto. So it's like, again, I think the clearest comparison, although it's not exactly the same, is a market, right? So you can't just get a market, you have to get the market license, and that's a basic business license, basically. So that's the same. And if they got an individual sidewalk vending license, that's a basic business license. Again, when you have the manager who has the vendors registered underneath, there's some stipulations about so, okay, here's the line. So the vending manager shall take reasonable action to assure that every registered sidewalk vendor is compliant with all health laws and regulation, and may discontinue the registration of a sidewalk vendor who violates any provision of this chapter. So the vending manager is meant to ensure compliance of the sidewalk vendors. So for example, if a sidewalk vendor is vending in between the spaces, like on the street where they're not supposed to be vending, that falls into the responsibility of the vending manager, the way that it's currently drafted. And if I understood you correctly, you were asking if there would still be penalties for illegally vending, even if you were in a zone. So what the decriminalization does is just take that out of takes the power from MPD of enforcing that, and just makes it a citation that DCRA can give, like, like DCRA gives citations for many things, including vending. I mean, they'll go out and give citations for vendors, but sometimes when you call MPD, you know, what happens when it's criminalized, what we've seen in Columbia Heights, the example is that when people see illegal vending, they call 311 and 311 sends MPD. And that just creates a whole string of, I would say, like, not very pleasant interactions. And, but the final ticket's the same. So if DCRA went out there and enforced it, it might be a less traumatic interaction, but the enforcement's the same. The person is getting a ticket in the end, and they know they're not supposed to be there, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, on the very, few times in my time there that we've had to, we've had sidewalk vendors that have been an issue. We've never called MPD. It's always DCRA. MPD seems like that would be overkill.
Yeah, that's what we think too. And I mean, that's just not what has occurred in Columbia Heights. And there was a specific incident that the vendors, found extremely traumatic, where there was a 15-year-old young lady vending and who ended up getting injured because of the interaction with the police. So we just kind of want to not ever have that happen again.
Hey, Brian, while you're here, is there anything that we could add to the bill that bids could get behind? Because I mean, I don't want this to be a bid versus the, versus vending thing. Is there anything in the bill that would maybe have, I mean, it mentions paying taxes. If they're in a bid zone, is there a way that the bid could ultimately represent maybe a manager permit or something like that?
Well, the bid structure, I mean, the taxes, taxes are paid by commercial property owners. The businesses themselves don't pay taxes to the bid. I mean, they do, but it's passed through the commercial property. So in this case, everything's occurring in public space. So I'm not sure there's any avenue where the vendors or even vending managers would be part of the bid, unless it was a restaurant that was already in the bid, setting up some sort of satellite operation on the corner where they're selling whatever they sell. But I mean, it would be. I mean, I know that, there'll be public notice. It wouldn't hurt if if bids were specifically notified when someone applies for one of these within the bid boundaries. I don't know if it's going to be subtle enough that we wouldn't notice it anyway. But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, our concerns are, basically protecting the brick and mortar stores from, businesses that would come in without the overhead and hurt their business.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, Ellie, if you're able to take that feedback and then help incorporate that into any former drafts, that would be awesome. Does anyone have any other questions? Otherwise, I think we're going to turn it to Dee Dee.
Hey, I just had one question, Allie. So you mentioned that the way that this process happens now is that it's several agencies and it can be confusing and expensive. Will DDOT still run these permits or licenses through their public space process, which I think is what happens now?
So I think it really depends on from what I understand. So I would say I'm still working through this a bit in terms of my understanding. I need to get more clarity. But from what I understand, it really depends on where the spaces are. So for example, a lot of the spaces defined in the current legislation are actually DPR spaces. They're parks. They're not on the sidewalk. And so that's something to consider. But it's a little bit confusing, but I mean, what we're trying to solve for is the fact that there aren't any in Columbia Heights, for example. There are not, the way that the regulations are currently set up in terms of limitations on spacing, like how far you have to be from Metro and an entrance and everything, like there are no more spaces that they can give in Columbia Heights. There are 3 registered individual vendors, and DDOT said, like, we don't have any more spaces in this corridor. So we're trying to, work obviously with the safety needs of how DDOT manages public space. And if it were on their, I'm not sure exactly how it would work if you were trying to establish a new zone and you're going on the dynamic between like DDOT's public space and then DPR's space. I'm not 100% clear on that. I think that might end up coming out as people look at what we've defined as Columbia Heights and who says it there, but.
Okay, yeah, because I just there was an issue in Noma with a vendor that was in the right of way of the MBT, and so it was sort of like, and it did get into a confrontation. So, I totally see the need. I was just, obviously lots of people own rights of way in public space.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do, right. I think the public space issue was the key issue we were trying to solve for, because currently the vendors that are currently operating, have been operating for many years, are in spaces that they are unable to get a public space permit and and if they did, they wouldn't be allowed to move. So we were trying to give them some flexibility of movement, and give them a predefined piece of space. For example, there's something called vending development zones that already exist. And it's kind of a comparable idea, but there are currently no vending development zones in practice. So I think that wasn't an avenue that was, that we really felt like we could take, because there were just a lot of hindrances to getting one of those founded. So.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Allie. And
Thank
we
you.
hope that Brianne reintroduces this, or Councilmember Nadeau reintroduces this next year.
Thank you. I'm going to jump off. Thanks so much for having me. And
Yeah, of course.
I took many notes, so I'll bring them back.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Dee Dee. Dee Dee, are you here with us?
I'm right here.
Yay, wonderful. So we have a small crowd here.
Wow.
But yeah,
But
if you would, yeah, oh, well, I don't know about all that, but well, I won't discredit Mr. Zatoli over there. I will, if you want to start your presentation or just talk to us a little bit about what the grant funding would be going towards, and I will screen share the grant application in your budget.
Super. Hi, y'all. I'm Dee Dee Parker Wright. I'm the executive director of Jubilee Jumpstart, and we're an early childhood program on Ontario Road in the ground floor of a Jubilee housing apartment building. I always just like to remind folks, or tell you for the first time, that we're separate organizations. We are not Jubilee Housing and we're not Jubilee Jobs. We're Jubilee Jumpstart. I like to say we're cousins with the same first name. So we're the early childhood provider. We have 48 children between the ages of birth and 5 years. And I think you guys are probably familiar with this, but I want to tell you just specifically to 2020, we normally have 48 children. Of course, we closed in March, like the rest of the world and the city. And we decided in about May to really plan our path back. And so we reopened for children on July 6th. And during the summer, we had about half of our capacity. And then we have been working since the school year began towards full capacity. We're at 96% capacity. And I mention that because it's fascinating around the city and the country. There's two stories: huge challenges around childcare, and also huge challenges for families, and then huge challenges for providers. And so many providers are struggling to be fully enrolled because for a lot of reasons. And one really big reason is because their space is unable to be adapted in a safe way. So that's the real nexus of my application, is that DC Health and OSSI's regulations and COVID guidance for childcare providers are that children have to be, there can be no more than 8 children in a group, and they must be in separate rooms. if you were to visit our center, we've got 2 sets of suites, which are basically 2 classrooms connected by a diaper changing area and a kitchen, very separate, those 2 areas. But anyway, so the way that we were able to work really fully enroll is by, we needed one partition, and we needed kind of a gate and fence system that literally creates enough distance between, in particular, our infants and our toddlers. So, so that is what we need to be open at 100% capacity, is incredibly high-priced partition and gate system or fencing system. So that's really it. The kind of weird thing, and I don't know, Japer, if you can add more like details to this. Oh, you can see my specific items there. Is that we applied we sent in our application for this grant in early July, and we really needed to proceed. And so we've actually already purchased and installed those 2 items. So I know that retro funding is not normally the way of this kind of grant, but that's our situation. So I wanted to be really transparent about it. That's all I've got.
Yeah, thanks so much, Judy. So yeah, we do. I believe I've CC'd you, John. I have at least CC'd Amir. We have gone through the process of pushing this through the Office of ANC. The 2 questions that we got from Gottlieb were, was this a previous, or did they already purchase it? In which case I responded to, we delayed it because we had other grants during the summertime, and then also they needed it early because they've got to enroll kids. We haven't got an answer to that. According to ANC law, you can't do a reimbursement. However, I think that he is checking with the emergency law, the COVID-19 emergency response law that they passed on behalf of ANCs, to see if there is an option for us to do that type of reimbursement. If not, Dee Dee, you did mention that there would be a possibility of, you can apply for another grant relatively quickly. Would you be able to talk just briefly about if we weren't be able to do a reimbursement, what we could have you apply for?
Oh, yeah. I have a couple of options because I've got all sorts of things I always have to purchase. One is we're super excited about an opportunity that is developing. Our pre-K classroom is our only classroom that normally enrolls more than 8 children. It enrolls 16 children because they're 3 and 4. And so the bigger you get, the less space you need. It's, a strange thing. But we currently are having to serve our pre-K group class in 2 groups. One group comes Mondays and Tuesdays, and the other group comes Thursdays and Fridays. And then they receive virtual instruction during the times they're at home. We have been looking, searching, talking to everyone we can in the neighborhood for months to find a place to do a temporary pre-K classroom, because we just have to create a second classroom, a full second classroom, if we're to serve all the children full time. And so I'm super excited. We're currently working with Crawford at the Line to use the Adams Morgan Community Center classroom downstairs. So I'll crush fingers and, send emails to the DCRA and OSSI that we can get that licensed. But anyway, so what we have to do is purchase a whole lot of equipment and furniture and materials to set up a whole separate classroom. And so that would easily be able to be an application. We are hoping to be in that space in December.
Okay. Okay, cool. John, questions?
Yeah, I'm thinking, Dee Dee, just the easiest way to get this through our reviewers. And the more direct a connection we can make with a COVID-19, emergency, the easier it's going to be.
Mhm.
And any $4,000 worth of stuff that looks like it's COVID-19 related should be able to go through. But it's just me talking. I mean, I'm going to support whatever you and Japer decide to do. But it seems to me that something like, well, we're going to buy personal protective equipment for the staff, and we're going to buy cleaning supplies, things like that you're going to buy anyway, and it's a recurring expense. So if it takes us 2 months to get this approved, on the third month you're still going to buy cleaning supplies. So that kind of an expenditure, very clearly tied to, well, if you didn't have COVID-19, you wouldn't need the extra bleach, or if you didn't have COVID-19, the staff wouldn't need high quality masks.
Yeah,
It's self-evident, and it's easily purchased anytime you get the money. So that's just my suggestion, but whatever you come up with, I'm going to be supportive.
Yeah, Dee Dee, are there expenses like that? I think the reason why John is going that route is it seems like every month we're always pushing the COVID expansion law. Like every month we're like, hey, so this is PPEs, that's great, hand sanitizer, that's great, but what about gift cards, and what about hotspots, and what about laptops? So I think what John's asking is, we've already gone through some of these routes. We know we can for sure get you money through these routes. Are any of those routes an option for you? Is that
Well, I'll tell you. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Go ahead. Okay.
Oh no, mine was literally to say, is that what you were saying, John?
Yeah. The more direct a connection we can make, the better.
So I want to be real clear that one of the surprising developments of the COVID experience has been a super supportive response from Aussie. I try to say that in public spaces because they don't always get a lot of good press. And so they have been supportive in a lot of ways. One is by paying for slots that were not filled for 7 months. The other is that they are providing a whole lot of PPE. They are really meeting a lot of our needs for that. We look a little, this is a personal thing. I love the panda bears, and they provide us with those total panda bear kind of full size robes. I often think we're like taking care of pandas, but anyway, so I really, really hear the really good guidance, and I think that I just need to really look at what can be.
You don't need that. Yeah. You don't need,
and so what can
PPE.
what can be one of those recurring expenses that can be directly related to COVID? Because anyway, we have a lot of recurring expenses, but
and again, like we did the hotspots and the computers. I don't know if any of the kiddos need anything like that. And then also the gift cards too. I know that was really helpful for folks. But I mean, I'm down to fight for this all the way. I mean, I responded. Gottlieb said he would get back to us before today, John, and I emailed him last week. And I bumped him today in response to the question of, was this a previous reimbursement, and how many people will this be helping? And I mean, Dee Dee, if you want to talk about the impact on how many people that this could be helping. To me, it's not just the kids and the students, but kind of like the whole apparatus, because you're able to continue to function. Is that kind of how you see it as well?
Well, I'll tell you another thing. I'm surprised. I'm just trying to say in all the public places that I'm really proud that we were able to pay our folks throughout our closure. 100%. All staff were able to retain all of their salary, and but us operating at capacity continues to keep folks fully employed. And so we've got 6 staff assigned to that suite that is that benefits from having a partition and a gate or a fencing system. It's kind of sad to talk about fences with the children, but it's true. We of course have 8 infants and 8 toddlers, and so that's 16 families that are affected, impacted by us being able to be fully open. You know, we're a tiny place, so our numbers are kind of small.
This is also like per semester, so you plan for the longevity of this. I mean, it's not just going to be the fall semester, but likely the spring semester, probably the summer semester as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's part of, we have had one COVID case at our center. We had in about mid-August. And so it was like a really great kind of midterm exam on our COVID policies and procedures. And we handled it really well. But what we expect is obviously that will happen again and throughout flu season and whatever the winter brings us. When we are able to demonstrate this division between the classrooms, it limits who's impacted by any closure and by any exposure to a child or a staff member who may test positive. And so, yeah, they'll continue to be in place for the long haul. So while it's, I'll tell you this little secret, because I know you're terribly interested, but everything about childcare, we were like healthcare facilities where we were like made for this moment. We already had a lot of requirements around, you know, universal precautions and, you know, good personal hygiene and, you know, lots of cleaning and bleaching. And so, so everything that we've just turned up to 11, if you will, we'll just keep in place forever because there's nothing wrong with it. We hope to someday have parents inside the center again and not have to do our check-ins on the sidewalk, but on an internal sidewalk. We're not in the way of the flow of traffic. Anyway, but we've made adjustments, but many of the higher quality super level of division and cleanliness will just keep in place.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, John.
Just, Didi, I'm grasping here, trying to help find some things you might be able to write.
Okay.
You know, to charge to our $4,000. How about testing? You know, like if you needed to buy thermometers for the kids, or if you had to pay for testing, you know.
Yeah. Well, so I super appreciate that. So, and I think when maybe our little, our like, you know, disconnect here is that we really, and I should have just been more on top of this, but I was just trying to figure out how to get us open. We really had to invest in all that stuff in June and July to get open. And so, but that's you got it, that we are all about. In fact, we've now found the best performing thermometer. If you ever need to know, I'll be sure to tell you the brand.
All right. Okay.
Anyway.
Well, good luck with finding something that Gottlieb will be happy with. And
Yeah.
All right.
So that was kind of my thing. I think that if Gottlieb approves this, then we should move forward. And if not, Didi, I will work with you in the very near future to get something that does. I mean, yeah, you guys are a great nonprofit. You help a lot of local folks, and you know, I feel like this is a good use of our funding. So. And I think we could get a majority of folks on the commission to do that as well. So, John?
would you need a resolution at this point, Japer?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, since we've discussed it. And or actually, let's do one, and let's add the preface of Gottlieb approval. That way, we don't have any procedural hiccups with who knows what happens after the election. So Yeah,
That the committee recommend a $4,000 grant to Jubilee Jumpstart, subject to finding specific items to fund that Gottlieb Simon would approve.
yeah, second and make a motion of, yeah, we both approve. So yay, thanks, Dee Dee. I'll be in touch as soon as I find out. I'm actually surprised he didn't respond to me. He's typically really quick on when he knows he needs to email someone. So I
Well,
will
thank you.
try to get this corrected, and we'll be in contact soon.
Okay, super. Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
I
thanks for your
appreciate
time on a Wednesday.
your concern for our kids anyway. Watch out for us. We're walking around in our costumes on Friday. So yeah, it's
Great.
little
Well,
delight.
we're talking about Halloween at the end of the agenda. If you, we're talking about COVID safe Halloween, so I can share a little flyer or information with you. That way you know of where to hit the spots locally.
Oh, we're going at 10 in the morning to to a very clear destinations. Are you kidding?
Nice.
I was
Okay.
just telling you that we'll be walking around looking even cuter than ever. Yeah. All right. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks, Dee Dee.
Bye.
Right.
Okay. So I believe the next thing in our agenda is ranked choice voting. Is that correct? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have a quick video that I want to share. And from that, we can discuss it briefly. I know that we'll have ranked choice vote folks at the full ANC meeting, but they're not here right now. So let me screen share this real quick. The impetus on this resolution in favor of ranked choice voting is these folks reached out to us. They are trying to build a movement to get this type of voting in all jurisdictions, specifically looking at those that have numerous candidates first. So like our at-large race is a perfect example of why ranked choice voting would work for us, because we normally pull just a ton of challengers, and for the foreseeable future, probably will have a ton of challengers for those few seats. So can you guys see my screen? Yes, awesome. Can you hear it? All right. I hope you all heard that. The sound worked, right? Okay. All right. So I have a resolution that I have drafted. How do I stop? Don't want to go down a YouTube hole. Jeez. Okay. Okay. So you all can see the resolution. Okay, so I sent this around and it'll be posted publicly as soon as possible. Essentially, the few points that I want to point out and why we need ranked choice voting, it is, and these are based off of studies and statistics. It increases voter turnouts. There's more valid votes in ranked choice voting than choice one voting. 60% or almost 61% of the respondents in the most recently used ranked choice voting voted or were in favor of keeping it or expanding the use of it. So I know that combats the fact that people are like, it's too confusing, people don't want to do this. And then the next part is, and the biggest part for me is, it increases the percentage of candidates of color running for office. Increases the probability of female candidates and female candidates of color winning office. So that, but just all folks wanting and running for office, because instead of running against someone, you're able to run and build coalitions. So I think that this is a pretty easy one. What I'm asking for is once we have the update on the at-large, I'll be entering in who the winners were and what their percentage was. But essentially, I think it would be great if we had leaders who were able to have and win with majority support, especially our at-large members. So what I'm asking here is for 1C to request DC council members to reintroduce the Ranked Choice Voting Act. So this would be sent to not just these folks that are currently in, but also the council members elect, to hold hearings and to pass it in law in preparation for the 2022 primary and general election. And then it also requests Mayor Bowser to sign it and work with the DC Board of Elections to inform the general public on the voting change, because there will need to have education around this. I'm definitely amenable to pretty much anything. I think the most controversial thing to me in this resolution is how quickly we would want to implement it. Typically, it's about a 4-year implementation. However, advocates have asked for it to happen immediately. And I think depending on who wins it on the 3rd as to how quickly we could get this on the books. So I am open to any questions. John? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, John.
Pardon me. At that last part of the resolution where it says, be it further resolved, there's a phrase that says work with DC Board of Elections. And I'm thinking it might be smoother if we said work with the DC Board of Elections.
Yeah, I mean, education from Missouri, so grammar. This isn't a Bridget Pooley Grammarly check, that's for sure. So please read through it.
That was it. As long as you give me the everything else is fine.
Awesome.
Hey, Japer, what that Ranked Choice Voting Act, what elections does that pertain to in DC? Is it every?
I thought it was primaries or I thought every not ANCs. I don't know if it's ANCs or not. I would presume. Actually, I don't think we should presume. All of it. I say all of it.
Okay,
for sure council and mayor and AG. I know for sure those, but I don't know about ANCs. I don't know why there'd be a carve out for ANCs. I don't think there should be. But yeah, and I'm definitely interested, and if we need to call anything out like that too, that's fine. I'm interested in doing that. But if there's no other questions, I do want to end this by 8. That way we can, and we do have another 2 things on the agenda. Cool. All right.
Need a resolution for this?
Yeah, if we can just do a motion real quick, I'll motion to move this favorably to the next full ANC for consideration.
I second it.
Awesome. And I support. John, I presume you support as well?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is a letter to the Department of General Services regarding the public solicitation of a public restroom. We passed a resolution last year. I still need to find the resolution and the date I wrote it, so I know we have it. Essentially asking for the passage, the enactment, and the funding of the Public Restrooms Facilities Installation and Promotion Act of 2018. That was sponsored by Councilmember Brianna Doe. And what I would like for our ANC to do is to essentially submit a form and have our form have great weight behind it. That form has a few questions that this committee and then the full ANC should probably answer rather than just one person answer. So John, if we could go through these really quickly, I think that would make the most sense. And then we could craft a letter around these answers to submit. That way we don't miss any of the things they're looking for, and we're also able to add our spin to it. So the first question is a need for a standalone public restroom in DC? I think yes. John, is that a
Sure.
yes for you? Okay.
Could you put the questionnaire on the screen, or at least let me
Oh,
go
sorry.
back?
I'm so sorry. I stopped sharing. Let me share it back. All right. Can you see?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so letter questions. So yeah, is there a need for standalone public restrooms in the District of Columbia? I think that ANC 1C should say yes to that.
Okay.
How frequently do you witness public defecation or urination in your neighborhood? I think that the ANC should put daily.
Based on the feedback we got, I'm confident of saying once a week.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm down to put daily or once a week. We could put those as both options.
Okay.
How frequently do you encounter discarded feces or urination? I don't see it daily, but I do see like bottles of urine and or diapers weekly.
Okay.
Okay, what is your first recommendation? So this is the actual question. What is your first recommendation for a location for a standalone public restroom? So yeah, where would we want one of these?
I would put Unity Park on the agenda, on our short list.
I concur. I think it would be cool to have one in near 18th Street, on 18th Street, somewhere prominently. I don't know how big these things get, but I would gladly put one in a parking spot next to a bike share station to keep people from peeing on businesses.
That's a question to ask, Japer, because in the discussions that I've been a part of or just heard in other ANCs, it's only been conversations that are public space, not in roads. So to basically do a parklet for a standalone, that's you guys should, well, it's a question to ask, certainly.
And during Adams Morgan Day, we've often placed porta potties right up against the SunTrust Bank building.
Yep.
You know, near the garage entrance that the police had used to get their vehicles in and out. And that's a pretty deep sidewalk, and it's right near the corner of 18th and Columbia. Not the alley, but actually on the sidewalk, but just flush up against the building.
Okay.
And then if I could add one more, it would be Walter Pierce Park. I've heard complaints from nearby residents that the people who use the park, including the people who are part of sports leagues for that soccer field, they will use the location of the old community garden as a place to urinate. And, we stopped having it as a community garden because it was found to be a burial ground. And I don't think burial grounds and urination go together.
Yeah, no, that's just disrespectful. So I would also like to put in Marie Reed soccer fields. I know that there's people that use the fields when the facility is closed, and yeah, not all the businesses are close by, and those bushes absolutely get it. And then I think it might, how do we feel about having one at SunTrust Plaza and or asking what any new development to come in here at SunTrust Plaza to have a public restroom? How about that?
It's a great issue. I'm not sure I'd want to tie up this questionnaire on that because, we're still in the DC Court of Appeals on SunTrust Plaza. But when we start negotiating community benefits, that should be right up there.
Awesome. So do you have any other areas? I'm thinking, where the current portage on that DHS is installing could be also a permanent location.
There was some talk about putting that near the Safeway. Maybe Brian knows for sure.
I think it's in the alley right next to Phil's. You know where the people
Can y'all
that
hear me?
are taking. Oh yeah, Brian. Yeah, did they install that yet?
They did it. It was put in yesterday. It's
Yeah.
on the curb before the alley, kind of in front of Kojibo,
Okay.
near the bus stop. So yeah, that's there and operating. Safeway, the manager at the Safeway thought it was a good idea. His bosses did not. So that's where that died.
Brian, do you have any ideas of where, or do you know of any businesses that would be interested in having a public facility near or around where they wouldn't?
Yeah, we actually filled out this form and we suggested Unity Park.
Cool.
Good place for a permanent restroom.
Yeah, awesome.
It gets tricky beyond that when you get into private space. Obviously, SunTrust is a big question mark, and the DPR field, it's like, well, at Marie Reed, there's in theory public restrooms, although in pandemic times it's different. But yeah, that was kind of our focus.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that's great that the bid is also, that was your number one choice.
Yeah,
Okay.
And for number twos as well.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
But,
Yay.
Sorry.
Look at you. That was funny. Come
But,
on, Poop Toad.
But there's also theoretical running water at Walter Pierce for that fountain. So that can make things easier.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for that. These are all the questions that they asked. I want to simply add our previous resolution in favor to this letter that we'll be sending and how many people voted for this. And that's pretty much it. Do you have any other suggestions, John?
No, I like it. Thank you for moving it along.
All right. Well, I will. This is due like November 20th or something. So we definitely have time. So that's good, but we have to pass it this go round. So yeah, if we want to make a motion, I think we can get this meeting adjourned before 8.
I move that we approve the language that we've discussed for the letter to DGS and advance our recommendation to the.
Cool. Yeah. Second. Awesome. Well, if there's nothing else, the only thing I was going to say about Halloween was we're just going to add it to the website and for folks to stay safe. I know that there'll be things at Unity Park and the Line Hotel. Brian, do you know of any other businesses in addition to Joseph's House on Lanier? What?
I think League of Her Own is doing something. I saw that.
If
And
you
then-
hear me, I'll be asking Chris to do an update about it. So yeah, if you could just send us over anything as soon as you hear it, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, and we'll be doing our Ad Mobile music thing Saturday as well, and throwing some
Sweet.
candy out of the truck. So
Awesome. Those are so awesome. I'm getting a lot of like people that are really enjoying that. So good job on
Great.
that.
excellent. Glad you like it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'd